this down a little bit. Mr. Herman, you're going to make another noise at all? You're going to be dismissed from the meeting for disrupting this meeting. That's your last warning. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. We've got a quorum and a lot of items to go over. So first we're going to go into general public comment. For those who have general public comment, we'll actually go into multiple speaker cards for items under the purview of this committee. So we'll start with Mr. Previn.
Good morning. It's Eric Previn from CD2 Studio City, and I just want to mention this is going to be negative commentary, and I do not want to be interrupted and would like all of the protections afforded under the First Amendment. And when I say negative, I want to be positive about how appreciative I am that the Disney company is going to be providing $1.1 million in park hopper passes to the LAFD. I think it comes from the right place. It's a nice gesture. But there's also an article in California Today and the New York Times today about how employees of the Disney Corporation, widely in Orange County, are living in their cars and are only making like $11 an hour. Now, I want to, separate out the issues, because obviously the first responders should be treated with respect and dignity, but this is a lot of money, and to do that, when you're experiencing this kind of giant corporation taking advantage of Angelinos. You should read the article by Jennifer Medina, a New York Times journalist, Rodriguez. She's very smart, and it's an interesting piece. I mean, it leaves you very conflicted, because many of us, enjoy all that stuff, and it's a wonderful way to celebrate. But it just, it blanches the typical resident's mustache to imagine the same group who we do revere for the great work, but have been dragged into the muck for excessive payments in that drop article by Jack Dolan in the LA Times, and have also are widely known to have a good pay package. They do make what we call quadruple in the industry, which is they get compensated at a high level. So what can I say? I want to encourage the firefighters to do a great job, as they often do and always do, quite frankly, rescuing us, holding the line. But I cannot abide by it. Maybe they could give these gifts to the disadvantaged children out there. They do love Disney, we all do, but they can afford it, because it's $135. They just jacked the rates up. And I don't know. I only mention it because it hurt my feelings. And
Okay,
I hope that
so 1 minute for general public comment.
All right, well, in general public comment, I do have to raise the question about whether or not we should be, once we convict somebody of speed racing, which is terrible, obviously, and today downstairs, Mayor Garcetti is announcing that there's an 80% increase in fatalities of pedestrians, but I don't think that's involved in the speed racing, but it is a problem. But I don't think we should be impounding people's vehicle for a month as part of the punishment, because that is a crippling financial problem for a kid who may have done something stupid, but needs to move on with his life and needs to do his time or whatever, pay his penalty, but that's an excessive penalty. And I also don't understand how we could levy such a thing at conviction, because doesn't conviction come after a trial? So this is like just an extra little cherry. Now, nobody wants to reward that population for doing stupid stuff, but this is exactly the kind of law that gets us in trouble. So finally, I'll just say, I know that you're involved heavily in moving the lien items, the district, hearings out of the city council and into committee, and I would advise against that.
Thank you very much. So the next speaker on multiple cards, and by the way, if there's anybody here, is there anybody that has not entered their names in to speak on any of the items? Okay, so we'll go ahead and close the submission of that and take the names that are already on the board. The next one is Mr. Herman. You got card on every item. Stick to the items specifically.
So on motion number 1 regarding this is not about sexual harassment. This is about emergency management on public right-of-ways. We keep blaming the homeless people for blocking the public right-of-ways and creating a high risk to mudslides, the same way the city was warned about the fires. And we allowed the homeless encampments to continue to grow in Los Angeles because under HHH bitches couldn't provide housing for the homeless. They want a World Cup, but we're going to get mudslides. The weather is coming. The rain, 3 days of rain beginning Friday as I prayed to Moses to ask God for more rain during the events, that a mudslide and similar red flag days would happen in Los Angeles. Then I go to item 7, regarding the Board of Fire Commissioners, Disney Company. As you heard the previous speaker, people are underpaid at Disneyland. They live in their cars and they have to work under the slave incorporation of Disneyland. Why do we have such high-risk people living in a danger area of parking in your cars? Because the homeless sleep in their cars just as well under HHH, and you have to bitch just to get out of the streets of Los Angeles. So say no to the World Cup, because you're not safe if you sleep in your car and some white nigger says you can't park and sleep overnight. We have rent control, and you can't sleep in your car. It's a fucking insult by the mayor, Eric Garcetti, on homelessness. Now, my general public comment is a concern about why 2 detectives were fucking women and not paying. All you gotta do to sleep with the bitch in Los Angeles is just pay the bitch. I want to get paid. Wayne Spiller wants to get paid because all we do is bitch. When you falsified under Englander and Kanabi to put Wayne Spiller in jail over what?
Okay, those aren't items under the purview of this.
You identified public safety. It's against Wayne Spiller. You called him a racist white nigger with Nazi emblem on his public speaker card, and you arrested him under false charges and false allegations, and not one action by the courts, by the fucking TRO and the risk management did nothing. So as long as we got detectives wanting to fuck women and police wanting to fuck young 15-year-old cadets, and you, Mr. Risk Englander, stop.
All right, thank you very much. Your time is up.
In your time off.
You're continuing to disrupt this meeting.
What do you mean my time's off?
Okay. Please, sergeants, if you can escort him out. Thank you.
What do you mean escort me out for what?
For disrupting this meeting, as you continue to do every single committee meeting and council meeting. So,
I'm glad you can remember that, sir.
not hard to remember.
Fucking Jews can
All right.
remember everything except
Please show him out.
homeless.
Please show him out.
The only thing you fucking
Thank you.
Jews can remember is that I'm homeless.
Thank you, Armando. So, is there anybody here who has never been to committee meeting or? Okay. Welcome to your Los Angeles City Council and Public Safety Committee meeting. So moving on, and now we're also joined by Councilmember Joe Buscaino. So we have Monica Rodriguez as well as Mitch O'Farrell. Thanks for all being here as well. The next, that concludes all the multiple speaker comments, so we'll go ahead and close that as well. Is there anybody, and additionally, is there anyone here for just general public comment? I don't see any, so we'll go ahead and close general public comment. And let's go on to item 2. We have one card for item 2. Oh, that card just disappeared. Okay, so we have no cards for item 2. So colleagues, what I'd like to do is move a number of items on consent, unless you want to call them special, 2 through 7.
Move the items.
So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, without objection, that'll be the order. Those are approved. Do we have any technical amendments that need to be considered? Or
No, sir.
adoption of any CAO reports?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. So with those will be moved. We'll go ahead and hear next item 1. And that's to instruct the Department of Transportation and Public Works to report on the necessary steps to create a program for ensuring that the public right-of-way is clear in areas that are at high risk of mudslides during weather events. And if we've got anybody from the departments to come forward on those, I'd like to ask my colleague, Councilwoman Rodriguez to open it up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, this item is related to a motion that, many of you are very well familiar with the initial natural disasters that have occurred in my district. As a result of both Latuna and the Creek fires, much of the topography in the northeast San Fernando Valley, just as with the Squirrel Fire, is left very vulnerable. As a result, many of you might recall during the rains of December, January, that we had a significant amount of mudslides along. In fact, there were countless videos that documented cars being carried through, and again, making it very difficult for first responders because of the access that they need to some of these hillside areas. The rationale behind this is to help develop a protocol much like the Red Flag Day that would help to assure that we clear our public right-of-ways from any parking in the areas where much of these topographies are going to be left vulnerable as a result of some of the fire areas. And obviously this is something that has occurred regularly amongst hillside communities. My district is no less vulnerable to that, and so my hope is to establish some protocols that we can develop between the departments to help assure that we can help create an environment where during these potential slide events, just as we have with red flag days with high fire season, that we know that during these rain seasons we have the potential to have these slides, so we want to make sure we mitigate any possible risks in that way. So I'd like to ask the Bureau of Engineering and the Department of Transportation if they could join us.
All right. We're also joined by Councilmember David Rue.
Councilmember, we'd like to also ask the Emergency Management Department to come up also.
Please, thank you.
Thank you for bringing this motion to light. We're going to, we've been meeting with the other departments, Department of Transportation, the Bureau of Engineering, the Bureau of Street Services, EMD and Fire Department have been meeting to discuss this protocol. And we've come to develop a framework that we think would work with, for this program, and also similar to the Red Flag program. So I think there's a number of different ways to look at this. We've approached. One is we've looked at identifying the roadways and the right-of-ways that would need this type of service. The fire department has developed areas where their fire apparatus needs to get through. Also, the Bureau of Street Services, Bureau of Engineering has identified locations where we would need emergency vehicles such as skip loaders or bulldozers to come through the area to clear debris basins or to clear any kind of debris on the roadways. So I'm going to turn to my partners in BOE to kind of discuss a little bit about what type of maybe trigger points or how we evaluate looking at the putting up these developing this protocol.
Good morning. Patrick Schmidt, Bureau of Engineering, Geotechnical Engineering Division. As Edmund just said, we are working on things to evaluate the trigger levels, which is obviously the weather reports. And one of the key factors is not necessarily the projected rainfall amounts, but the intensity of the rainfalls. So we are working with the Task Force Committee, Latuna Fire Task Force Committee members, to develop the appropriate criteria that would trigger these, not sure what we're going to call them, but days where we would prohibit parking on streets that we feel could be subject to mud flow or debris flow. We're also evaluating the geology, the steepness of the hillsides, and evaluating and researching actually information from the United States Geologic Survey and the LA County Department of Public Works, who actually develops phase maps following fires, which are very beneficial to our use. So we don't think at this point in time there's a need to develop our own mapping, but that may be a need depending upon what we decide as the motion and the report and the progress is made on this task. That's all I have today.
I think a big aspect of this is also not only identifying the locations and the areas that we need to restrict parking, but also how are we going to get this information out to the public. We're going to, a lot of these items we're going to resemble what we do in Red Flag. So I think the Department of Emergency Management Department has some information regarding that issue.
Good morning, committee members. I'm Rob Freeman, Assistant General Manager for the Emergency Management Department. As you know, in partnership with LAPD, we run the Notify LA Emergency Mass Notification System that can be used to alert residents of any type of danger, including what we're talking about here. We base our decisions on recommendations from the operating departments. So in this case, the Fire Department, National Weather Service, the phase maps that Patrick mentioned that are issued by the Los Angeles County Department of Public Works, so that we can provide timely notification to residents. We typically have used it for evacuations, but I think we want to take a look at how it might be useful for this type of warning to people. We always just want to make sure that we've got a concise, accurate message. There's character limits in the alerts that go out that you get on your cell phone. We have the ability to reach people that have registered for Notify LA. We have the ability to reach people that still have copper or hardline phones in the area. And we have the ability to access the federal wireless emergency alert systems that we can get all cell phones in the area. So depending on the nature of the event, we can scale the notification appropriately. But we've been using it more in the last 3-4 months than we ever have. It's proven to be very effective. Had a lot more people sign up for Notify LA, and we continue to test it and use it. So what we can offer is the burn area task force that meets on a monthly basis. We meet next week. I will place this on our agenda so that we can determine how can we be of help as a point of notification to the public. Be a new use for us. We just want to make sure we get good direction, and then very importantly, making sure that there's update information, people know where to go, because these alerts will be issued. They're not going to be issued every hour as things change. So for the fire department, they typically maintain current information on evacuations, sheltering, things like that off their website. But those are the kind of things that we can discuss in detail, and we're here to help.
Thank you. Graham, did you have?
Good morning, council members. Deputy Chief Graham Everett, I'm the Chief of Staff of the Fire Department. We're really here to support our partner agencies in this endeavor, and the Fire Department, we're really about promoting public safety throughout. And as we saw in the Montecito fires and mudslides following, this issue is a very large problem. It can cause major property damage, including issues with life safety. So obviously we want to be part of this, and we are partnered up with the agencies. We're also helping with EMD's initiative to get more people signed up for Notify LA, and working hard to get more people into the membership so they can get notified. So we'll be here to assist the other departments and move forward on the pilot.
So at this time, I think we can move, after discussions, we can actually start a pilot program by just putting up parking signs, temporary parking signs, evaluating, getting input from the communities and the other departments to see the effectiveness and how we could utilize this better, and then maybe moving forward after that, after an evaluation period of maybe a year, to determine if we need to go to develop some type of legislation. I know this will be effective in your area. I know Councilman Ruth's had some issues in his area, in the Laurel Canyon area, so I think this is a program that we can develop for the whole city.
Terrific. Councilmember Brew, I don't know if you had any questions. I just was going to continue because, again, we have imminent rains that are projected for the next couple of days, and while we're preparing, I know, for our town hall for the Creek Fire in particular, and I know DOE just finished concluding all of the geological evaluation of a lot of these areas. Are there areas that we've already identified as being most vulnerable that we could actually start to pilot this project, and how long would it actually take for us to get this implemented?
I mean,
For the Creek Fire and for actually all three, the Skirball Creek and the Tuna fires, we do have phase maps from the Los Angeles County Department of Public Works that could be utilized to identify streets that have a projected potential to be subject to mud or debris flows.
So then we could start potentially notifying these individuals that perhaps we might implement this as soon as possible as a pilot, or is this going to be some time to work out what the protocols would be on that? How much longer do you think you might need?
I think that the town hall would be a good platform to maybe bring this up and have discussions in case there's something we're missing from the community. I think that's a good way to start. Like I said, we can, for Department of Transportation, we can install parking restrictions, temporary parking restrictions, without any type of legislation. So we can implement that anytime, but I think we can start something up quickly. We just have to kind of develop a little bit more of the framework of notification.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we, obviously there's a sense of urgency given what we experienced recently, the projection for hopefully, I know we're desperate for more rain. It's a mixed blessing. But, again, just to help flush out more of these protocols, I think is very important, and identifying whatever kind of moniker we give it for identifying for the public what that indicates. Just as Red Flag Day, everyone understands what that is. We need to develop whatever we're going to call this. So all ideas welcome. But anyways, I want to thank you all for your collaborative effort in not just addressing this particular issue and being sensitive to the nature of how quickly we have to develop this, but overall, again, everyone's response given the nature of the fires and helping to assure public safety going forward. So with that, colleagues, I have a request that I'd like them to report back to the committee as soon as they've developed more of these protocols so that we could get this fully vetted and flushed out for citywide implementation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez, for your leadership on this important initiative. A question for you, gentlemen. So there are two main underlying causes for slides, right? Just rain, a rain-soaked hillside, and then a hillside that's been denuded by a fire. And I know that in the 13th District we have entire communities on hillsides that aren't denuded by fire, but they are on sometimes road or rain-soaked hillsides. So are you leaning in the direction of these warnings or restrictions more heavily weighted toward denuded hillsides than just rain-soaked hillsides? That's going to be important because parking restrictions, that's going to affect the whole city. Just want to make sure that there's great attention paid to where the risk is the highest. So I saw a lot of the videos of the cars and the mud and debris flows from the hillsides. So what are your thoughts on that? Like striking the right balance?
Council member, we have the best geological information about the burn areas. We have the most precise predictor of where problems might occur, not only where mud flows might occur, but where streets would be impacted. For other areas, less so, because the County Department of Public Works, as was mentioned, did very detailed site evaluation of the burn areas for a number of reasons. So the information that we have available to us is very detailed and useful for those areas. For the other areas, we can certainly look at that, but we don't have the same precision to know that mud flows would happen.
I could imagine a scenario wherein you have grades, sort of levels of danger, kind of like the high fire danger zones. I can imagine where if you had a wildfire and you have a denuded hillside and then it's going to rain, you're in an extremely high sort of probability of a mud flow, and the degrees lessen if it's, depending on the level of burn or no burn that there's been. So I could imagine a scenario when there's sort of different levels of warning so that people know what they need to deal with, and then measures can kick in terms of parking restrictions in the highest danger zones, perhaps. But, okay. Thank you.
And just to close on that, recently I think we learned a lot from what happened in Montecito as well, and they just incorporated exactly that. They have for voluntary evacuations, and they have a scale, a color-coded chart that get into from green, yellow, and red, something that we can look at incorporating if we haven't already for those not just high fire severity zones, but potential slide areas. and evacuations, and then add to that maybe even something that parallels that for large animal evacuations, because I would guess that from what we've learned, they need a lot more time than just somebody evacuating their home. And so maybe that runs on somewhat of a different scale. Something to look at and certainly report back on as well.
And Mr. Englander, just so you know, we do have a task force working on the equestrian side because, again, we want to assure that particularly where we have the higher concentrations, that when it's voluntary for everyone else, if they're in the fire zone, that it's mandatory for them to begin evacuation efforts. So actually, we are already working on that issue as well. So thank you for acknowledging that.
All right. So was it your desire to move this and just keep it here until they're going to report back?
So we can get a report back so
Sure.
that we can make sure we execute it and get all
Right.
the details in.
So we'll keep it here in committee, and then when you're ready, you'll let us know when we can reschedule it and you want the report to come back.
Hopefully, we can come back very quickly.
Great.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. All right, let's go ahead and jump over to item number 10, if we could. Do we have any cards on 10? Okay, on item 10, we have one. Mr. Rose, did you wish to speak first, or did you want to have, okay, come on up.
10. Council members, Eric Rose on behalf of the Official Police Garage Association of Los Angeles. We sent a letter to the committee. I think that it spells out our concerns. Unless there's any questions from the committee, I believe that we've covered everything in our letter.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If we can have staff come on up.
Morning.
Morning, how you doing?
Good. Brian Hill, Chief, Parking Enforcement Traffic Control.
Chief?
Good to see you all.
Good to see you. Thank you very much. Now, on this, just jumping right in, colleagues, we're in the middle of, we're not even in the middle, we've just begun sort of a pilot program. And it's, from my understanding, it's a 3-year pilot with Paylock to look at ways to enhance and streamline scofflaws, if you will, and create some efficiencies both with our customers and with the city. And so where are we? When did we start the pilot?
So the pilot began on August of last year,
Okay.
and we've been operating with 15 traffic officers assigned to our high priority scofflaw unit throughout this period.
And so walk us through the timeline, because it's a 3-year with report backs. So we're not quite through year 1 at this point.
That's correct. So we're about 6 months into the pilot at this point. And so the plan when we brought forward our pilot project, it was to operate for the first year and to determine some of the best methods and practices through that year. And the second year of the pilot will be used to evaluate the results that we obtain for the first year.
Okay. So with that, this was really meant to get an update of what's going on in the space and how things are performing. But it also triggered a letter that is part of the public record from the Official Police Garage Association. They are not simply city vendors like many others where we procure goods or service. They're actually, from my perspective, partners with the whole system of both enforcement and public safety, and working both with LAPD and DOT. And because of that, then the unique relationship in terms of being a partner with the city and first responders, they have delineated a list of questions and concerns that I think are very valid, that probably should have response. So what I would ask is, do you have a copy of that letter?
I do.
Okay. If maybe the best approach would be to have this conversation would be to respond in writing on each one of those points to address all of their issues that they brought up or areas of concern, so we can actually have a dialogue based on what their concerns were. I hope to take this in a different direction and just get an update, and then we'll have it come back after the 1 year. But I think because of their response to this, it behooves us to have that conversation here in committee. And so what I would ask the department then to do, Chief, is to report back in writing on all of their points. And so then we can go point by counterpoint and address some of those issues. I want to find out if the association is comfortable with that as well. Okay. And then one last thing on this, and I'll ask my colleagues if they have any questions, but I've also seen boots on recreational vehicles, which to me makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, particularly when they're vehicles that are either, that should be towed for a number of reasons, not just because they're scofflaws or have tickets or expired plates, but those are ones that I don't think, under the spirit of even the pilot, should be booted. And when I say I've seen them, I don't mean people have called my office. I've personally seen them booted, and trying to figure out why or how that occurred. And moving forward, and maybe it's just a training because this is a pilot program. Not sure.
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear that as well, that we would have booted an RV that is a scofflaw. We are, as you probably know, somewhat hamstrung in terms of our ability to immediately impound those vehicles because of the heavy-duty tow and some of the issues associated with that. I am aware, though, that increasingly in a number of neighborhoods we're seeing people who are deploying their own boots, kind of like the club, if you will. They have purchased these boots to immobilize their vehicles to prevent them from being stolen. And so I don't know whether or not what you've seen is a personally deployed boot that the owner of the vehicle has installed on their vehicle to prevent us or anyone from impounding their vehicle. But it is something, if it is our boot, I will want to look at as well to make sure that we're not.
And I'll make sure that I take some photos of them. I know where they're at, where I've seen a couple of them booted, so we can identify the boots on those. It's just fascinating to me. Would there be a reason to have any type of ordinance where a vehicle cannot personally boot their own vehicle on a city street? I mean, in case of an emergency or a fire or something where we've got to move vehicles, that prevents us from doing that. To lock a vehicle down on the street that then is not towable or movable in case of certain situations, can that create a circumstance that we shouldn't allow people to personally boot their own vehicle?
I think it is something we could consider, but I will say, yeah, I've seen those personal boots deployed, and so a tow truck would be able, and typically they're installed on the rear tire, and so a tow truck could fairly easily pick up and move that vehicle off the street. They're only deploying, I guess the problem would be if they deploy more than one boot, so both the front and rear, that would present more of a challenge for the OPG. But
I don't have a solution in search of a problem here. So if it's not a problem, let's not try to create something that doesn't exist. So we'll go back and look at some of those that I've seen, and it sounds like that might be an anomaly. And then if you can, what would be your time frame of reporting back and writing on the concerns and issues that were in the association letter?
I think we can have something back here 30 days.
Okay, great. So we'll go ahead and, let's go ahead and reschedule that for Public Safety Committee in 30 days from now. And then as we get closer, if you need more time, let me know, but that would be great. It'd be reasonable. Colleagues, anything on this?
Question
Yes.
for Chief Hale. How do you feel this pilot program is working, and how do your officers feel? What are some of the things you're hearing in terms of, has it proven to be useful? Is it being effective? Is it working?
Yes. So one of the assumptions we made with regard to this pilot is that we were going to be more effective in terms of capturing more vehicles, greater productivity. And in fact, the preliminary results have indicated that we're capturing about 9%, 10% more of scofflaw vehicles. So that is definitely something we're happy to see. The officers themselves have said that they like this mode of enforcement and prefer it over impounding because, as you can imagine, the scenario where you're impounding a vehicle, the time that it takes, it creates an opportunity for confrontation. And so by deploying the smart boot, they're basically in and out in a short period of time. So we're seeing fewer incidents of the type of conflict. Officers routinely have to call LAPD for assistance on impounds when you have someone who's 415 or creating a disturbance. Yeah. And so that has been a big plus. And so, yes, we are pleased, and the officers enjoy this mode as opposed to the former.
And how many boots have you deployed?
We're averaging about 50 to 55 per day being deployed. And that's, as I said, an increase of about 10 more per day than we were formerly as far as the impound, so, which is quite a few. We've had as many as, I think the record was 81.
In a day?
In a day.
Across the city?
Yes.
Or in the...
Across the city.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chief, for your presentation and your input and insight. Have there been any, in the short time this system has been deployed, have there been any technological issues, infrastructure problems from your officers?
Technical issues, I would say that, we have experienced some boots that have broken, but we have a relationship with the vendor to provide replacement boots. I'm not aware of any other kind of technical issues. That we are having a ongoing integration of the Paylock system, their accounting system, with the conduit, our citation processor. So they're working together to integrate their data, and so there's some issues there we're kind of working through, and that's kind of what we expect going through a pilot as well.
You've also, Chief, used 4 drop-off locations, is that correct?
I'm sorry?
4 drop-off locations?
That is correct.
And where are they located?
We have locations here in the central LA area off of Alameda, one in the West LA near National, South End near MLK, and we have a venue in the Valley as well.
And is it still too early in reading the report that it's on the fiscal impacts to indicate if this has been fiscally sound or not?
Yeah, it is. At this point, we are seeing an increase in the number of payments that are being made because we are, again, capturing more of scofflaws. But to say definitively as far as, what is the net effect to the city in terms of the general revenue, we haven't been able to, at this point, be able to say definitively. I think it's trending in the right direction, but it is too early to really get into the weeds on the fiscal aspects.
And Mr. Chairman, I do support your direction in being responsive to the letter that's been sent by our partners and the OPGs, who I've had an amazing working relationship with when I was slow, that they're very responsive. So I'm anxious to hear back those answers to those questions and concerns that our partners have had. So appreciate your leadership on that, Mitch.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Good morning, Chief. So
Morning.
so in the event that the boot is not functioning, does at that point, do you guys contact for a tow, or do you just wait for another deployed boot? How does that work?
So the officers have a supply of boots, so in
So
the
they have
event.
several,
that-
so they don't have to worry about if one doesn't? Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so in
Look forward
addition,
to more of your detailed information on that. It's going to be, I think, I love the use of technology. I think technology is a very important tool for us, and I think making sure that we identify ways of integrating technology is, I like the forward-thinking nature of this. So, thank you.
And you're welcome. Thank you.
so on the report back, if we could, I want to add a few items that were brought up by my colleagues. So in addition to responding to all the items in the letter, to identify any and all technology issues that pertains to not only the boots themselves, but also the data integration. And then lastly, the fiscal impact and the net effect to the city. I think there's more than sufficient sample size now, because if we've been 6 months into this, the basic math, if we're doing 55 a day for 6 months, that's nearly 10,000 boots that have been deployed. So I'd like you, if we could, work in coordination with the CAO's office to verify the numbers and how we're doing on what the financial impact is to the city, to include that in the report back as well.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful, and we'll certainly look to that, to get some additional information, perhaps working with the OPGs to get some of their data and information as far as some of the redemption rate and proceeds that they receive.
Sure.
As well.
Yeah, I'm sure the association would be more than cooperative. Okay. Great. I get a thumbs up from the association, so okay, good. Okay, terrific.
That's a lot of boots on the ground.
That's a lot of boots. I was waiting for somebody. I was waiting for somebody to throw that out there. All right, Chief, thank you very much. Thanks for everything you're doing, and
You're welcome. Thank you.
appreciate it. All right. So that'll be the order on that, on item 10. Let's go ahead and go into, if we could, item 8. And this is for the Department of Transportation report back on streamlining the city permitting process for medical transport. On item 8, would we have cards on 8?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair?
I'm sorry, on item, that was on item 9. Apologize. Item 9, we do have several cards on item 9. So we'll go ahead and ask Matt Armstrong, Paul Scarborough, Kay Kearney, Avo, come on up. If you want to all come on up and good morning.
Hi, good morning. Good morning.
And whoever wants
I guess I can start.
Whoever wants to start.
Good morning. So my name is Matt Armstrong. I'm the president of the Los Angeles County Ambulance Association, representing about 1,500 ambulances in Los Angeles County, about 1,000 of those ambulance permitted here in the city of Los Angeles. First of all, I'd like to thank Councilmember Englander for starting a motion a couple months ago that really helped this ball rolling, so appreciate that. I'm here today to represent the Ambulance Association and its support for the recommended changes that are before you. These changes are very outdated, burdensome, and make it very difficult for an ambulance provider to conduct business here within the city of Los Angeles. So I'm here for that support. I'd like to thank Jarvis Murray from the LADOT for having numerous meetings with ambulance personnel to discuss these changes, and we really appreciate his open door and helping us maybe make some changes that'll help both parties involved. So in conclusion, I hope that the Public Health Committee here will review those proposed changes and also be in support of them. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Hi, good morning. Paul Scarborough, Executive Vice President for PRN Ambulance. I'm also a board member with the Ambulance Association. You've heard some of the issues from Matt Armstrong, and although EMTs and paramedics are vetted by the Los Angeles County Emergency Medical Services Authority, the vetting process here in the city of Los Angeles is pretty burdensome and can take those field employees several months to complete that process. If an employee today, a caregiver, wants to change companies and they've been vetted already by the city or the county, they again have to wait a couple months before they can provide care in the city of Los Angeles. Patient care and transportation is currently being delayed. We know with the current flu epidemic, hospitals are backed up, they're very busy, and we often have ambulances in the peripheral or outside the city, up to several dozen at a time, that cannot respond in the city to move these patients in a timely fashion, which would free up valuable bed space today in those hospitals. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. Kate Kearney, a General Manager of American Professional Ambulance, and also a member of the Ambulance Association of we again support this motion moving forward. Our organization as well as our colleagues are suffering every day. Our turnover rate is generally about 50% due to the fact that our employees are moving on to further careers in fire, paramedic, nursing, physicians. And with that happening, that means that these people have to come through at a more frequent rate through our doors. It is causing severe delays in our services and our ability to truly perform to the best ability that we know we can. It's also becoming very burdensome for these employees because with their heavy school schedules and them trying to incorporate working for us, we now have to give them select times to come in. And very often it doesn't work for them. They are late to the appointments, they miss them, we have to constantly rebook for them. And again, just the trouble and the burdensome of it, there's a much more efficient way to do this. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Ava Avadishan, PRN Ambulance, good morning, and thank you for having us, giving us the opportunity to come and speak before you. I agree with everyone at the table today in what they're saying. I think there's a user-friendly, a business-friendly way to go about this approach. I think the current way really inhibits our employees from finding an opportunity to work for us, and it really does become a public safety issue with hospitals not receiving the ambulances that they need to move patients around. At PRN Ambulance, we have something like 100 employees that are not permitted in the city, and these are employees that are in ambulances that we can't use to transport patients in the city of Los Angeles. And I think we could collectively come together and come up with a strategy that works for all and is an effective one. And we look forward to that. Thank you.
Quick question, follow up, a couple of you guys real quick, just so I understand it. And I've done a deep dive into the space. I've been meeting with staff, and this is near and dear to my heart, and freeing up these critical hospital beds. This is a public safety emergency, and our hospitals are already on life support. And so the services that you guys are providing are critically important to the entire system as a whole. You had said that you have about 100 employees that are not, they don't have the ability to transport within the city boundaries. Is that because they don't meet the qualifications and requirements, or is that because they're backlogged and trying to get processed?
They're backlogged in the process.
Got it. Okay.
But often these employees may have already gone through the process with the city, but they came from another company that either has gone out of business or they're looking for a new opportunity, but they can't continue to function in that role because they're making a switch from one company to another.
Okay. All right, thank you all very much for being here. I'm going to bring staff up. I will tell you, colleagues, and to the companies that are here, there has been a major disconnect in over the years in conversation and dialogue for a number of reasons. I think one of it, from looking back in why, is that the companies themselves, the regulators have sort of remained silent and just sort of go through the burn and trying to get through and grind through the system and don't want to rock the apple cart. The staff has been understaffed and have just some draconian systems. We've got some new changes in faces, and also the folks that have already been there not only process these, but probably weren't aware of a lot of the issues and the overlap in regulations. There's been a lot of new regulations and requirements that the county now requires and the state requires, and these systems were set up long ago. What's changed dramatically since even introducing this motion is the dialogue and the conversation has been phenomenal. The department, which we're going to hear from, and we'll go ahead and bring them up now, so thank you all for being here, has been so open to streamline and create some efficiencies and eliminate some of the overlap, which I think is going to have a dramatic effect and change in this, and so I truly appreciate it. So good morning. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Good morning. Jarvis Murray. I'm the Taxi Cab and Franchise Regulation Administrator. So we oversee the regulation of ambulances, the medical transportation, and most for-hire vehicles here in the city of Los Angeles. And so as you guys recognize before you, we are looking to make some changes and continually try to make improvements. I absolutely agree with Councilmember Englander regarding the disconnect. And when I came into this role, that there wasn't really a relationship between the industry and the regulatory body, and we were putting them through paces which at one time may have been the right thing to do, but today through technology and through various rule changes needs to be reviewed. And while I would love to be able to fix everything overnight, we're not there, but we are in dialogue with the industry. They've been actually very helpful because I recognize the pressure that they're under, and they came into our office to discuss these matters with a very open mind and basically saying, just help us do our business, and that's what we're here to try to do. So one of the things that are before you are eliminating the requirement for fingerprinting by the LADOT.
I'm going to go over that with you in a moment. So.
Okay. The county already fingerprints ambulance drivers. All ambulance drivers here in the city of Los Angeles are required to be EMT certified. To become an EMT, you must be fingerprinted. So the county has already fingerprinted them and has their records on file. But under the current rule, they would still need to come and do another fingerprinting with us. And that takes time to get those records back. And after meeting with the county as well, we're trying to develop processes so that whoever is fingerprinted by the County of LA would not need to come back and be fingerprinted again by the City of Los Angeles. And that's one of the ways we're going to try to streamline and move the efficiency for the permitting. Other things that we're trying to do, not just for the driver permitting, but for company permitting, is we have a public inconvenience necessity requirement. That public convenience and necessity requirement, has us take a look at adding any additional vehicles on our road. So whenever these companies want to come and say they need to add even just one vehicle, they'd have to go through a process where we review our financials, review the vehicle, and just, decide whether another vehicle can be added to the system. After doing that, we would still have to go in front of the commission. And if they miss a particular window, the commission meets once a month, they could wait 45 days, 60 days before they end up just adding one additional vehicle. So that's also one of the things we would like to streamline, which is the requirement to no longer go in front of the commission. And that went before the committee, and we're moving in that direction. But that will allow the companies to come in with their 1 or 2 extra vehicles, or 10, whatever it might be. We review the financials, we make sure everything is good to go, and as soon as everything is passed, we have all the right paperwork, we can move them forward, rather than, okay, now you have to wait until we can get this on calendar with the commission again. So that's some of the things that we are trying to do. We're working with the county on the inspections. Currently they inspect, we inspect, but we do look at different things. We're more concerned with the mechanical issues. The county's more concerned with the equipment, the medical equipment, how it's working, the life-saving equipment that's in the vehicle. So we are working with them. This isn't the kind of thing where we're going to finish all of this in one shot. We're looking to continually improve. We're meeting with the industry. We're going to attend their functions. They have a meeting once a month where they go over issues that are pertinent to them with the county as well as with state regulations. And so our office is now a part of those meetings once a month, whereby they can now communicate directly to us. These are the things that we're having a problem with. These are the things that we'd like to see. And we're already beginning to discuss things such as potential rate changes and other things that will help their industry to move forward. Because what we really want to do is allow their businesses to move forward, to continue their business. And before we move on, I do want to just say that I do appreciate Councilmember Englander bringing this forward because you were very instrumental in helping connect our industry and the regulatory body together. And it's actually been a very good working relationship that I expect to continue. So thank you.
Really appreciate it. No, thank you so much. Couple things on that, I'm grateful at the Jarvis, all your work and your staff and moving forward and recognizing these. We put together a sheet that's in front of you that colleagues gave you as well. So outside of the live scan, which they identified as redundant, there's a couple other things I think that appear to be sort of redundant as well. Now, these are things that the city have always required, and they've been doing it for years and years and years, but the state and the county previously had not. But now they are. And so that's where the space has changed a lot over the years. And if we go down the list, for example, there's now a national registry, but we don't require the national registry, so that's not redundant. The California EMT certification. So as was stated, that you have to be EMT certified to be a driver. You have to get an ambulance driver's license from the state of California to do that. But then also we require that we review it. But it's already on file with the state. The background check, the state and county does it. It's required under the ambulance driver's license, and then we do it as well. But again, that goes back to the live scan, so that's redundant. So we're checking that box off for that. They no longer have to come through the city to do that because it's already being done. The DL51 is also, from looking at this, a redundant requirement, as well as a CPR card, which the state and the county now require, which they didn't before. So that's another one to look at. DOT requires that. The CPR card, there's an on-file link to, and then the California driver's license, obviously everybody requires. The proof of right to work, we're the only one that requires that, and I think that's a letter from the employer, and that sort of meets city policies and ordinances, so that's something we'd have to maintain and keep because the county and the state doesn't have that. The training letter is now also required of the state and the county. And then I've also attached here to the list of the steps necessary and the requirements that have both the city requirements, and then the last page on that is the county with all the check. If you'll look at the bottom, it says it's all the check boxes of live scan, government photo ID, BLS or HCP, all the requirements that this is their newest updated application, that they didn't have all these things prior to, all the way to and then in the requirements box near the top has all that information as well. So there seems to be even some more updated redundancies, if you will. So that's one part of it. The other part of it that seems to be a hang-up is that we have an antiquated system and Jarvis was great in walking me through this, an antiquated system where if one of these employees, and we heard from one of the vendors, or companies rather, they're not our vendors, that has 100 people in backlog, and if you can imagine what that does to cripple the emergency rooms and beds and hospital beds of people trying to move even out of the ER for longer term stay in that facility. It's a system-wide problem that has a ripple effect. That for them to make an appointment, they literally, this is what they do now, which is just an old system. They send an email to the department requesting an appointment. Oftentimes, depending on the workload of the department, because they also cover taxi drivers and others, that they'll get back to that company within a day, or sometimes it's a week or two, depending on if people are on sick, vacation, all those issues, workflow and work case. But then the appointments are full, so that it might not be for another 3 weeks or a month at the latest. But a lot of these certifications, the official documents are only good for 30 days. So like you go to the DMV, and that document's only good for 30 days, and so by the time you actually get an appointment, and it may be an appointment date you can't make because they're in school or they're doing something else or working or with family, so that doesn't work, and then they expire. So it could be 3, 4, 5 months before somebody actually gets into the city, not being the city's fault, but just the way the systems were set up. That's why there's such a big backlog. And then we've identified so many redundancies. So what I would ask is if we can do this. I'm not sure that we're ready for prime time to move this to council, but I want to do it pretty quickly. So 2 things. One, if you could look at these redundancies and see what else we may be able to eliminate and what makes sense, and get the feedback both from the industry, the county, and the department, and figure out any more of these we could check off and say that's already being met. That's number 1. Number 2, and this seems to be where the biggest backlog on the employee verification is a concept where they would not have to send an email to get a date, like eliminate that completely. So one of 2 options, either a system where they can sign up, just like you would the DMV online, and those are off the shelf. I mean, there's literally free software for this, and working with ITA, perhaps where they can either sign up. On average, just so you all know, it takes about 5 minutes once they're in front of somebody to process without live scan. It's a whole 5 minutes. So we're not talking about a major vetting process when it's just getting that person in front of the other person. That's all we're talking about. So maybe there's a system where they can do it online to request, and they'll see what appointment dates and times are open. That's one option. The other option might be, and if you can report back on this, where there's maybe 1 day or 2 days a week between certain hours. Say every Wednesday from 8 o'clock in the morning to noon, that there's somebody at that window and people could just show up. Walk-ins. And it's 5 minutes. So I would assume once we catch up to the backlog, we'll be good to go. So maybe it starts off for the first week being 3 days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, just eliminating the backlog. Then every week thereafter, it's once a week, every Wednesday, from 8 to noon. If you're late, sorry, come back next week. But 8 to, and then we'll never have to schedule appointments. We'll never have to, and if we have to change the fee structure to accommodate cost recovery, I'm sure the vendors would be fine on that. We're not really talking about that much. So if you can look at those 2 options and then the redundancies and come back to us and let us know what your thoughts are and what the department thinks and how we can get to, or maybe there's another option. I'm just throwing out hypotheticals to just eliminate this backlog. And then the very last thing is that if we have an employer or employee moving from one company to the next, but they're already certified, it sounds like a major redundancy that they've got to come back and go through all of this again just to change companies. Because I understand a lot of these companies are bought and sold all the time. There's a lot of mergers and acquisitions, and or employees just simply move into a different company. There's better opportunities. So having to go through the entire process again, rather than something else they could easily do online or updated their employer information or their new employee letter, simply if there's something in that space that once they're already certified with the city, what could we do in that? So if you could weigh in on those coming back, what I'd like to do is not have too much time between now and then, and if it's reasonable, I don't think a lot of these things are maybe that complicated. If it's reasonable to come back in the next Public Safety Committee meeting, we can just schedule it for the next meeting and then continue to find out where progress is, or and if something changes before the agenda of the next meeting and you say, no, I think we're close, but we've worked some of this out, we need another delay, but then I just know things are on track, I'm great with that. Okay. But then I just know things are moving forward. What do you think?
When is the next public safety?
It's every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks? Okay.
So it's just having a conversation in 2 weeks from now saying, we've looked at these things, here's what we could do. here's some options. And if, say, a week and a half from now, before we put it out the agenda, it's not time for that update, you can just let my office know and we can push it off again. But I'd rather we keep the dialogue going because I think we're close to.
I agree.
This is too important, and to have you so ready, willing, and able to make these reasonable changes, I think are going to go a long way to our entire public safety infrastructure.
We can do that.
Phenomenal. Okay.
And I just wanted to let the council know one of the things, and someone mentioned it earlier regarding technology. Our regulatory department has been very behind technologically, and
Yes.
And I've mentioned in conversation that we're still making these permits by hand, which is absolutely crazy. So we're putting together a new system because one of the delays is someone has to stand back there, take your photo, laminate, cut, do the whole thing. And so we are putting together a regulatory software system. It's being designed right now. We're designing it from the ground up, and it'll be ready to roll probably August, September, because again, it's going to cover our entire regulatory processes. But it will eliminate a lot of these problems. It won't eliminate everything, but for example, one of the things is we will have a direct link to the DMV.
Which you don't now.
Which we don't now. Well, we do, but you have to get in behind a green screen computer and do the whole, one query. It's impossible to do.
Yeah.
So, but we will have a program where we'll have it, where the DMV will upload with us every day so that we'll know if there's a problem with someone's driver's license immediately.
Really appreciate it. That's great. So this will only get better even from that space.
It's going to get better. We're starting from kind of a prehistoric age a little bit, so bear with us, but we are going to get better and there will be continual improvement.
Terrific. No, I really appreciate it. I think if we do create some of these elimination of redundancies and then also streamlining the appointment process, that additional benefit on the technology enhancements and getting into just even today's time will be dramatic. And so really look forward to working on this.
Thank you, Mr. Englander, for bringing this forward, and thank you for your work on this. Technology is a very useful tool when it's available for you to use, and it helps to improve efficiencies in the city and how we do service. So thank you for your work on this. I think it's really important for us to always look for opportunities to streamline, and however I might be of assistance with, support from, on my end, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I want to thank the industry as well. I mean, this literally just only came up because it was in conversation with Avo and some others that he's been a leader in this, in saying that they've been biting their tongue for years and not wanting to say anything because obviously, you don't want to, some folks don't want to speak out against any regulators, and by all, I mean, and the department for, easily and quickly recognizing, saying, oh, yeah, no, these things aren't working and we can fix them. Is fantastic. So it's a good story. It's going to save lives. I truly appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just wanted to let you know the next public safety meeting is during the recess, so the next meeting won't be until March 28th.
Okay. So March. So we've got a little more time. And by the way, if there are things that we can do in terms of even the scheduling element, we don't have to wait. You don't need approval from council for that. For the check boxes and eliminating some of the regulatory requirements, that's maybe different. But in terms of the scheduling, if between now and then you want to even have, hey, we're going to do a crunch day for backlog, everybody come in on this day and let the industry know or whatever. If there's things you want to experiment with, by all means, it would be great.
Thank you. We'll definitely do that.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. All right, with that, colleagues, that'll bring us to item 8. Here we are again.
We are indeed. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Scott Porter, the CIO, Chief Information Officer for the Fire Department. Council members, Mr. Chair, thanks for having me back.
Thanks for being
here. Appreciate it. Back in October, before the Finance Committee, we were asked to report back on the Fire Department's AVL project. Fire Chief issued his report on January 29th to City Council, and I'm here to answer any questions about that report. I can give you a brief summary, or we can get right into discussion and questions. Really up to you, sir.
I don't think we need a history, but a summary of where are we at. I mean, since the last conversation.
2-minute version. How about that?
Perfect.
In 2013, the fire department started to experiment with GPS, global positioning technology, and AVL technology. And that experiment was essentially to install equipment into rigs, primarily to provide visualization on maps at Metro Fire Communications. In that early implementation, there was no intention of actually using GPS technology for dispatch or AVL. In 2016 and 2017, the fire department completed a series of projects that were really necessary precursors to us moving to location-based dispatching, or what we call AVL dispatching. Those projects included our radio network infrastructure had to be upgraded. We installed new software on the mobile computers. We developed enhancements to the CAD system. During that time, over that course of that basically 2-year period, we also learned a lot about the AVL-related equipment that was installed in that 2013 time period. Mostly that much of the equipment we found to be malfunctioning. It was easy to unplug. Some of it was never installed correctly. So as we began to upgrade our infrastructure, we also put in place a series of systems so that we could gauge the reliability and the capabilities of the current AVL equipment. So during that time, we started a series of projects to begin replacing that equipment and also validating its accuracy. We did an initial analysis of our GPS data in August of 2017. We found inaccurate location reports from approximately 22 devices out of a fleet of over 300. Those inaccuracies were things like vehicles jumping at inordinate speeds or being out of the country or that sort of thing. Most of those failures were really just malfunctions of the equipment. Once the equipment was replaced, those failures all pretty much went away. We've since repaired or replaced defective equipment, and in October we conducted another very comprehensive study and found no location accuracy problems in over 380 vehicles that are in the fleet. Since then, we've implemented several measures that help us to identify and address the possibility of equipment failures, GPS errors, software monitoring, and replaced a whole series of defective equipment. In 2017, about April-May timeframe, we actually started to seriously begin the development of our AVL CAD capabilities for computer-aided dispatch. We did a series of small pilot projects. We talked to other agencies like FDNY, Phoenix Fire, that have been using AVL for many, many years successfully, got a lot of lessons learned. We talked to industry, we talked to CAD vendors, we talked to mapping vendors, and we came up with a design and implementation of our AVL system that we developed over the course of the summer. In October, we did an initial test of that over about 3 days. We got a lot of great information. We found a couple of things that we wanted to make adjustments to. We stopped that test after about 3 days. We've since made quite a few of enhancements to the CAD system, and we've also just about completed all of the equipment upgrades. And now in March, probably close to the end of March, we're looking to implement that first phase of AVL again into production. Our plan is that once it's implemented, that will be the beginning of AVL, and forever our AVL system will then continue to evolve from there. So that's kind of the brief. There's more detail in the report, and I'm happy to have any discussion or take questions.
I just can't happen soon enough.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Yeah, so what I would ask is we're looking at March for phase one.
Yeah, that's another kind of interesting thing. We talk about it in phases, but really what March represents is...
Tomorrow's March, but...
Yeah, let's say by the end of the month. Okay. What we're doing now is final stages of testing, and then there's a lot of coordination with Metro Fire Communications in terms of when we actually deploy something big like this.
Right.
So likely it's going to be closer towards the end of the month.
Do we have any funding shortages that, in terms of systems that have to still be brought online?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. In order to do our deployment in March, we're done. There's no funding restriction. However, in order to complete what we're calling AVL and the AVL project, in this year's budget, we had $1.7 million allocated, and a majority of that was allocated towards AVL-related enhancements and equipment. That money was contingent on IGT funding, and I think that's actually there's some question right now about whether that's going to be available to the department. I defer that to the CAO's office for the details of that. But that would hinder our ability to complete what we're calling the AVL project in total if we were not able to get that money.
Okay, so that's number one. So I have a recommendation on that. Number two is, have we explored additional funding opportunities out of either reprogramming UWASI grants, which I think would be applicable because of the mass and frequent mutual aid we provide as the regional provider. So,
yeah, I haven't. I'm not personally aware of any UWASI connection other than with our radio system.
Sure.
But I will definitely take that back and look for opportunities there as well.
So what I would look at is, I think moving forward, is I want to send this over to request that this actually go to the not the council. I think it needs to go to the Budget and Finance Committee with a report from the CAO on the IT financial report to see if we can deploy the system into, if you will, phase two.
Yeah.
And by the time that sees the light of day, both through committee and council, we'll be through March.
Yes.
And we'll know where we're at. So I think it behooves us, colleagues, to go ahead and the recommendation from this committee is to send this to the Budget and Finance Committee with a report from the CAO to report back.
It's already referred to Budget and Finance, this
Okay,
item.
it is. But we haven't added the CAO report element, or have we?
Ed Rose with the CAO.
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to be releasing our mid-year financial status report, and as Scott had mentioned, the department has some fiscal challenges in their current fiscal year, so we would recommend that we have this discussion in the context of that discussion.
Yeah, and I understand that. The departmental shortfall is probably nearing $20 million, is my guess.
Mm-hmm.
This being different then because there were funds identified in the IT budget for this particular resource, not as a departmental budget expense as a whole, right? So if we can spell that out in the mid-year, that would be great.
Yeah, and there's a lot of moving parts right now with fire's budget, so.
I know, yeah. Okay. All right, well noted.
Okay.
And that's probably, and when's the mid-year then coming to?
We hope to release it within the next few days.
Okay, all right.
Fingers crossed, a lot of stuff.
Yes. Okay, yeah, no, I know it. All right, thank you very much. Okay, then let's go ahead and, I think we can note and file the report at this point. We don't have to keep it in committee, we just note and file, send it on to council, and then we'll look forward to the discussion in the mid-year.
Excellent.
Which makes sense, and it'll be momentarily. Great. And if you can let me know offline when we're deploying in March or doing, I'd love to see it in action.
As soon as the actual deployment date is set, I'll make sure that you know.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Terrific. Okay.
Okay.
Very exciting.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
I believe that concludes this agenda. And colleagues, we are adjourned.